lovely atmosphere. Growing up here for 30 years, moved away, but I always come back because it's such a great place.
Everyone has a smile on their face.
Now we are very happy here.
It's really nice being able to have lots and lots of different cultures.
Because everyone looks after everyone else's interest, and it feels quite safe as well.
They appreciate getting help, and it's just a great area to work in.
You can make heaps of friends because there's a lot of people in our school. The community centre and the school work together to produce lots of talent from the school.
It's actually becoming the place to live because it's such fun and there's always plenty going on.
Thank you and good morning.
The story of Victory Village is really about a number of different strands of activities kind of just converging together. The school itself wanting to engage in a different way with its own community, not just the school community, the wider community. Various community agencies around town knowing that there were people that they could support and help. The community also saying we want better access to support and help, and we also want to have nice events on the park. We want to be supported to reach our aspirations for the future. So Victory is very near the central city of Nelson, and yet it's in a kind of little back corner to some degree because it's in that lower valley area and it is a bit rather colder here. Overall, about 6,000 lower income families and a mix of 60% Pākehā, 30% Maori, 10 to 12% Pacific Island, and an increasing number of Asians who are those former refugee families from Burma, adding to that mix of colour and culture. If people say they live in Victory Square, people associate that with the shops and with that lovely big square, that's the reserve, that's the cricket and all the other activities that go on there.
The journey basically started in a very deficit way. This community in Nelson was seen as an area of deprivation.
And the school was struggling. There were many solo mothers, many refugees, many people on benefits because the housing was poor, substandard, and the rents were cheaper than almost anywhere else in Nelson.
Cold, damp, families struggling in poverty, lots of crime and lots of transients, and that was partly around housing.
Many of our families were coming into our school and moving out in 1 year. And at its peak, there was up to 68% of all our school roll of children were coming in and moving out in 1 year.
High truancy at school, as in children not attending regularly. So, that sense of displacement, disconnection, and struggle.
I was appointed as a deputy principal. It's quite a significant time in education reform. And it was a stage when schools were deciding what they were going to do, making policies, for the first time being asked how they wanted their school to be shaped. It was a very powerful, permission-giving thing to whole communities to self-manage and make decisions for themselves. By seeking the advice or seeking the opinions around our parents about what they want for their young people or want for their families. And many schools didn't initially take the opportunity that was given or the permission that was given under Tomorrow Schools to make a unique school. Victory was a bit different. It took that permission and has used it in an inventive way, stretching the rules maybe, but that's what has been the moral courage and the boldness and the action that's created something different. We were able to make a community school that actually met the needs both of education requirements, but also the desires, the passions of our multicultural community.
In 1991, when there was the benefit cuts, Reverend Wallace Chapman, the minister of the Methodist Church, decided to go knocking on the doors of this community to find out the effects of those cuts on the people here. And what he found was that one of the major things was lack of access to health care, affordable health care. So he, with Margaret Belton, the public health doctor and others, set up a community clinic based at St Luke's Church. It was a weekly clinic where people could come and talk about their health and get assurance as to whether they needed to see a doctor or not.
Efforts were made to help people with their doctor's bills, with advice and pharmacy bills.
Two things have stayed with me from my time working in the clinic. First, never underestimate the courage it takes for most people to come and ask for help, particularly financial help. The second was a young woman who came with a sick baby. She had just moved into a housing corp house which had holes in the floor and no curtains. It was the middle of winter. St Vincent de Paul helped with curtains, and I never found out if Housing Corp fixed the floor. It struck me then that immunising children, dressing wounds, etc., in my other job as a practice nurse was infinitely easier. The solution to the woman's problems and her sick little baby, who would never be well until they were sorted out, was much more complex. That little health clinic was just the beginning.
Unfortunately, that couldn't be sustained. However, one of the other things that grew out of that was the Toi Toi Trust, which was set up by local people to address the needs of children for after-school and holiday programs, parents working long hours, often working different shifts and needing to know that their children were being cared for.
So a small group of us called a public meeting, designed a small leaflet. The school printed it out, photocopied it out, and we delivered it to every household in the Toi Toi area.
So that too was established, and it went for some time.
In 1995, we had another very powerful document that was being introduced called Health Promoting Schools, that gave some very clear direction around the health, the mental health, the social health and the physical health of a school and what they may do.
Our Board of Trustees were interested. They were certainly interested in a holistic approach to educating a child rather than just a concentration on an academic. We actually believed that we needed to listen, the school needed to listen more intently to our community. We were wanting actively to work with parents together in partnership, and that meant meeting some of their needs. It was also a realisation that if we really wanted to change what our school and our community was, the school actually had to change itself, the way we thought about our young people. So it was more than that they were part of a school between 9 and 3, that in effect it goes way beyond that the school gate was also a barrier to many of the agencies that could help a school and help our families. So the school chose to start eliminating barriers that we were putting up often.
So we began a range of after-school care on our grounds. We began early childhood play groups on our grounds. We began adult education, Foundation English for refugee parents on our grounds.
We introduced, particularly for our Māori students, bilingual education, so it went initially from 1 class and now it's up to 6.
Through all these changes, we strengthened our homeschool partnerships because there were a whole lot more parents coming into our school. We began a family fun night, so we made school a positive fun place for families, and that began about 2000. A big changing point from the time that I came was our appointment of a school social worker that helped us see the bigger picture. It helped us have a shared understanding of the professional language and knowledge that as educationalists we sort of had, but by becoming involved more with the social worker, we came together a lot more. We began to understand we could create our own positive direction. We could build social skills as part of the education of our students and positive behaviours.
It also allowed us to be aware of some of the indicators, some of the things that the school could do to support and to help our whānau and family, so that they felt that they could trust a person to address some of the things that young people can't address, but it certainly affects their learning in the school environment.
We stopped seeing the school as just a 9 to 3 place. We saw we didn't have to be teacher, community worker, social worker. We could provide opportunities to use the strengths of others. We didn't actually have to solve all the problems, because that's a dilemma for school teachers who are really busy. We started seeing there were a whole lot of other people who had expertise. We just had to tap into them.
In 1999, Brian Marufi Campbell, who was living in this area at the time, was absolutely incensed at the thought of having a road going through right through the middle of this area. And so she sat on the corner of the Victory shops and asked the local people what did they think of this. And of course they said they hated the idea, but they also came up with the same things that Reverend Wallace had found, was that they wanted community services here that were accessible and affordable. So that started Briar thinking about a community health centre, and I happened to work at Internal Affairs and Community Development at the time, and she came and asked me for some support. And from that we started having weekly meetings, bringing all the people anyone from the community who wanted to have a say,
so that everyone could be part of the very beginnings of this conversation about the possibility of starting a community-owned medical centre.
And in time, Briar and others formed a committee and established an incorporated society.
We had this idealism, we had community backing us. I was chairing the board at the time, so I just kept telling Mark that we could do this thing, and we'd sit there for hours and talk about it. It was just this massive talk fest. But the good thing about it was it set the vision.
Being involved in local community development is fine up to a point, but often you need to involve yourself nationally with organisations that can help you to get some of the things done that you can't at the local level. And Healthcare Aotearoa, which was an umbrella organisation for community health organisations, was providing Briar with a great deal of, and Leanne, with a great deal of support in their efforts to try and establish the health centre here.
Unfortunately, some things changed. The funding changed for Healthcare Aotearoa, and also there was some resistance from the mainstream health services here, not understanding or recognising what a good thing this would be. So unfortunately, things went into abeyance, and also Briar died because her cancer returned.
And the last thing she said was, don't let victory stop. You've got to keep going, and that was what we did.
And we decided then that perhaps the primary healthcare strategy and the new PHOs was the way to go. So we took a step back at that point, stopped working on the community health centre here, and put our energies into the PHO. And it was a very difficult job, and I think the most that we succeeded was in getting an access liaison nurse. And the access liaison nurse was eventually situated at the primary school here.
And it was an opportunity for me to get to know the Victory community, the Victory school community, and I think probably the biggest thing was to build relationships with key people who could then help me connect with those who needed some support around their primary health care. I was also able to connect with the Victory Urban Village that was based here at the time.
The Victory Community Association began meeting about a year before it was formalised in a document that I've tracked down to 30th of May 2005.
There was Mark Brown, John O'Donovan, and also Richard Butler, and local resident Andrew Button, and the dairy owner David Ranshod, and Frank Saxon, of course, who owned the corner shops at Victory Square.
1994 that I bought a block of shops in Victory Square here, and that was after having bought a couple of blocks of flats. That was my commercial involvement in the area, and in 2000 one of my shops was occupied by the police, and John O'Donovan, he came along, and he's a big man with a big vision and a big capability,
John O'Donovan was our first community constable. He just did some incredible work in this community, and one of the things I really remember him doing at the beginning was he took a lot of young people here who didn't have driver's licences, and a lot of them couldn't read or write, and John worked with those young people. Some of them were illiterate and still got their driver's licence as a result of the work that John O'Donovan did. And then he negotiated with the youth courts and with the justice system so that they could get the reduction on their fines if they got their driver's licence. And it just began to turn things around. It was incredibly proactive.
And times moved on. The police station no longer gets vandalised or windows broken. It's staffed by volunteers, and it's a very great asset to the community. But I think the Victory is lucky to have the shops. There's 11 of them there. They come and go a little bit. They give a face to the community. You know, some from outside the community say come from Victory, and those shops and the park, I think, are the two things, and then the school down here is sort of growing as well.
And then, of course, thanks to a good friend of the community who was working in the City Council, Richard Butler, saw an opportunity of looking again at the needs of this area.
At that time I was working with the City Council on community development, and the newly established Family and Community Services introduced this new fund called the Community Initiatives Fund. And I thought, well, is that a way of, we talked about it, is that a way of actually, in a way, keeping the idea or the spirit or the spark of the Victory Community Health Centre idea alive? So via the City Council we applied for that, and we got funding for 3 years for the project. So that's when Kendra Douglas came on board, and
we called it Victory Urban Village, and I was kindly and very fortuitously supported by the school to be hosted by them in a way, having a room up above the staff room.
Kendra worked on putting an inventory of resources, both the physical resources in this Victory community, but also the social resources. Who are the strengths? Who are the natural leaders within the community?
Building connections and joining dots that were actually already there, but finding a way to connect some of those things. So it was about certainly a partnership with the school on that project, but then reaching wider into those other organisations. So the local church, Victory Community Anglican Church, the Victory Community Trust, which is YMCA, kindergartens, early childhood centres, starting to sense that there was a wider number of stakeholders, all of whom had a huge investment in Victory and its people.
She also, I guess, followed up on what Briar was doing and did some questionnaires, some interviewing of people. What were the community's wants and needs?
It was about working in a particular kind of way which was open-ended. We don't know where this is going. We want to be led by the people that live here about what they want or what might help support their lives to be better.
And the third thing was really to get more of those clinics that were already happening in terms of social services coming in and running clinics from the school. She kept building those, so it was about 15 or 20 clinics a week actually happening with social services. We're coming in and finding a broom cupboard or a corridor or something in the school and actually running a social service based here at the school.
Later on, towards that end of 2006 and 7, there was a joined-up project with City Council and Sport Tasman and the District Council about a project called Way to Go. And the school actually decided to take the contract on for that first bit, but it meant that we employed someone.
I was employed within the Victory Urban Village project. I was Kendra's assistant for half the job, and the other half was doing the Way to Go sustainable physical activity programs, and I was working out of the school.
So that was the beginning really of the coming together in a more practical way of the Victory community and their needs and Victory School, bringing together those two, and then realising that there was an opportunity to reinvigorate the Victory Community Health organisation.
I have this lovely memory of Leanne Curtis walking in the door when I just not long started on the Victory Urban Village project, and she said, you know, so we've just had this conversation about the 2020, you know, our future and where we're going. And I've gone home thinking, oh, look, we just need to revive Victory Community Health Centre. This is clearly the next step that we need to do. And I looked at her sort of querulous, and suddenly this whole story of the history back from 1999 through until Bri had died. And I realised then, Leanne had the documents, she quickly introduced me to Pat Webster, and suddenly this whole process unfolded of we've got a platform not only of resources, which included a reasonably large amount of community funding that was still sitting there in trust, and that the vision was still so clear in a lot of different people's minds about what they wanted to have happening. And when I look back on that now, I think if that money actually hadn't been there in place and all of those documents which mapped the vision, none of us would be sitting here today. So the project at that stage was starting to spread out more. There were some services starting to come. We were getting the connection around counsellors, the possibility of that. Alongside that was the school building a new school hall.
The Board of Trustees had an opportunity to spend some of our building money, and they made a commitment to a community centre, a true community centre being used by our community. The hall was the opportunity to put all those agencies that were working in the schools, converted toilets, cloak bays. Somebody mentioned broom cupboards. Well, if you take out a wall between two broom cupboards and carpet it, it's not a bad place. Remember, it's not the skin, it's the heart. So it's not necessarily the building, that's what happens inside is the most important thing.
It wasn't really until the school hall began to be built that we recognised this opportunity to add more spaces into what they'd already decided on, and that Victory Community Health might actually be able to have a place on site here within it. Mark then made the choice with his board to put on the extra wing. We ended up taking it over. So from July of 2007, when the centre was here and open, Gareth was already here, I came in as transferred from the project and came in as development manager for that following year. Later that year in 2007, Penny came in as Be Well nurse, and the three musketeers worked this process over the next two and a half years, and then we started to add other part-time staff in.
We all work to the same principles, and the principles of supporting families to be uplifted and in charge of their own lives and moving forward, as they say. I'm a registered nurse, but my main role is that first connection. And so what I love about working here is that anybody can walk in the door anytime. It's not about making appointments. And together we work out what it is they need. And it's what they need for their whānau well-being, their general connectedness to this community, and of course their health. So there's a lot of specific things that we've been able to set up, like cervical screening clinics, hearing clinics, before school checks that I can do, which is really good because that family then has a connection to this centre once their children start school here. I connect in with families through the local childcare centre and kindergarten and the playgroup. And also we have an ESOL class here, English as a Second Language for the refugees. Also the kohanga reo that's based here at the school, I'll often help those families with their health needs.
We've got a whole team, in a way, really, of midwives who have come over the years. So that real early antenatal, right through to the birth, to then getting children involved in our playgroup, through to getting them connected to early childhood education and then possibly becoming part of the school or something else. So keeping parents well during those processes is, part of Penny's role.
It's the determinants of health that I get so involved with families. Food and families being able to afford those things, being able to afford to go to the doctor, and things like housing. No decent insulation, it's cold, it's damp. They all increase the incidence of asthma and all the respiratory conditions, of glue ear, and children who are constantly unwell, which means they miss school, they miss preschool. A combination of all those things just means there's constant health problems. Also, we have a work and income officer who comes here once a week, and that again is a fantastic way of connecting people who often feel really shy about going to work and income.
A number of residents said to me, we'd love access to counselling services, and we got that service up and going. And I've seen the changes go on in families as they've come. So there's a sense of them starting to resolve issues that they've felt stuck with.
I'm the garden coordinator here at Victory, and my job is to manage the garden space and the volunteers and the programs that we offer around being able to grow your own food at home.
And other classes? Nah, it's just our class.
The connections I'd made through the initial work at Victory morphed into the Victory on the Move program. That now has 25 arts, cultural and physical activities that are run in the community centre and by partner agencies in the local area. They are led by a range of community volunteers and paid tutors. We've got Lark in the Park, which happens in Victory Square on a summer's evening on a Friday night, can have up to 100 people at that. We've developed our Matariki Lantern Parade, which is in its 5th year, which over 1,000 people participated in this year. Great support from local volunteers and local performers. No, the community really engage, it just pays back really, really positively.
I think what makes this place really exciting is that it isn't just a health service, it isn't just a school, it isn't just an after-school program or whatever. They all interconnect, and sometimes it might start with a health issue, but they end up running the Just Cooking program, or it might be that they already working in the garden, but they want to participate in something else, or that they know that their neighbour has a health problem, and how can we connect with them? So it's everybody joining in together, and so it's everybody's place, and everybody feels equal and welcome.
So over time, Victory has changed. It's changed from quite a deficit place as a school, and all the indicators of a failing school, to a place through people acting and changing behaviours and feeling committed to make a change, to become what Victory Village is now, and our partners that were involved. So there's a whole range of leaders that contribute to a primary school. We have a little saying at Victory that everyone matters. Who matters? It's everybody that's involved with educating those young people that come to our school. And really that means, rather than a school being a fix-it, it's being a little bit more proactive and putting in things that are preventative. And that preventative means really the whole community being involved in a school.
There's been significant educational improvements. Māori and Pacifica, because of the connection through from the Kohangareo, who's based here, through to the whānau classes and bilingual engagement, has really lifted the sense of esteem and confidence and educational capacity. And in fact, I think some of the latest stats say that they're above the national average now.
The aspirations of our young people has changed, so that we now have large groups of our young people in the year 12 and 13 at our colleges.
School roll has gone up. Lots of people have said we want to be at this school because of its diversity, because of those kind of values that underpin it, that every child matters kind of philosophy.
The school has not stood down, suspended, excluded for any child for more than 10, 15 years. That's that philosophy that in effect we are willing to work through issues, and some of them can be quite challenging, rather than moving them on, excluding them from a school education. So that whole sense of being included, or inclusiveness, is acted out in every day here at Victory.
Parents feel that it's a more open door, that there's a natural flow between their children and their relationships with the teachers and the principal. So there's a sense of cohesiveness and belonging, and that they can come in and make comments or ask about things, and things happen.
The Victory Primary School, or the campus, or the site actually belongs to our whole community. So our belief is quite strong that this is a community resource. It's literally open 7 days a week, and it's encouraged to be used by our community, our people, because it's their place.
Some of the other changes are about families feeling more safe and secure to stay here. A local agency of which I was a part, got a whole Healthy Homes project going, so quite a few houses were actually retrofitted. So houses are literally warmer and a little more comfortable. So transience has dropped away. Crime's dropped away because people are more connected to each other and know each other. So even in the last few years, new businesses have actually started. There's been quite a reshape to the face of that community, which is the Victory Square shops. A whole lot of playground equipment in the park. They got the lights into the trees. They do the little day out. They've got the murals happening down on the shops. So there is a sense of vitality that's come as a consequence of a lot of that sort of wider Victory work that the Community Association's done. That perception from the outside has shifted and shifted and shifted over time to being that people have come saying, actually, I've heard about this community called Victory and I think I might quite like to live there because of these connections and a sense of vibrancy and cultural diversity, and that it's a go-ahead kind of place. Let's be part of some kind of momentum of community change. Someone I spoke to the other day said that, that families that bump together grow together, and he meant that in a way that when you bump into each other in the dairy and then you bump into each other at another event, maybe even not in Victory, it keeps reinforcing your sense of connection and belonging. It's been a long journey in lots of ways, but over those last few years, since sort of 2005-06, there was the sense that lots of things came together and opportunities were recognised to work together, to partner in certain circumstances, to just even have casual conversations that we could find a way that they might weave in between the school community and the wider community, and then to wider Nelson around agencies and other people who were interested in this community and concerned in some way. And that momentum just slowly started to build up, like that perfect storm. And then once the centre had become a place to come, we now have, in the space of 5 years, 30,000 people through the centre every year. That's 2,500 people every month. And as one of the teachers said to me not long ago, what did these people do before this hub, this first stop place happened? We opened the doors and they still stay wide open.